Hello, and welcome to Marathon Swim Stories, where we connect with marathon swimmers around the world to find out how they got started, what makes them tick, and why they keep going. It's where we explore the human side of the superhuman feats of endurance swimmers, the connections that we have with each other, our support crew, and the waters we cross. If you've ever stood at the edge of a body of water and wondered what it would be like to swim to the other side, you're in good company. I'm Shannon Keegan, marathon swimmer, water relationship coach, and founder of Intrepid Water, where I virtually teach swimming freedom. Freedom to get started, shed the confines of the pool, or your preconceived notions of what's possible. Find out more at intrepidwater.com. Hello, Marathon Swim Story listeners. In today's episode, I talk with ice mermaid Melissa Kegler. After an unremarkable English Channel success, Melissa took stock of her Triple Crown and wondered what she really wanted from her swimming. This has led to a newfound appreciation for the pristine waters of the Pacific Northwest, the mountains, the old-growth forests, and the animals that live there. While Melissa doesn't feel the need to swim further than 20 miles, she's discovered various applications of her swimming skills, including hike-in swimming and ice swimming. We talk about how unique our marathon swim stories truly are. There really isn't one type of swimmer that takes on marathon swims. Her realization early on how important it is to have a coach, and how continually pushing to swim further isn't for everyone. Be sure to check out marathonswimstories.com for pictures and more about Melissa, including a link to the Cascade PBS movie, Ice Mermaid, Cold Resolve, which brings us along on Melissa's inspiring journey to become the first American to complete a sanctioned 2.5-kilometer ice swim without a wetsuit. I hope you enjoy today's episode. I'm here today with Melissa Kegler, another Pacific Northwest person. I guess I feel I'm like barely in the Pacific Northwest because I'm literally 20 miles from the California border, and California is not Pacific Northwest, but I feel like we're both Pacific Northwest. So tell me, Melissa, what's your swim story?
My swim story. So I feel like that's always a broad general question. So my swim story, I guess sometimes I feel like it's a little different than other people's, but I find everybody has such unique swim stories. It's really hard to quantify. You know, one person thinks theirs is unique, and it turns out all of us have unique stories, and in that sense, they're all kind of similar. But I grew up in Michigan and grew up, you know, in the lakes there, but I never knew open water was a thing. I didn't know open water for, you know, competitive sport was a thing. And in the grand scheme of swimmers, I started swimming competitively really late. I started in ninth grade as a freshman activity to do. And I think the misconception, especially with marathon swimmers, is that, oh, you're a marathon swimmer. You must have been swimming forever. You must have swum in college. You must be fast. And those are the three criteria I think everybody thinks of when they think of marathon swimmers. And I started late. I knew how to swim because in Michigan, there's so many lakes. You know, you grow up swimming in the lake, but you grow up, you know, swimming to the dock or something. That's a big deal to get out to the platform. And I remember when I was little, there was this one time I saw my first pike fish in the lake. And it was just so big and it terrified me. And I swore I'm never swimming to that platform again, which was maybe, 100 yards away. But, you know, I grew up swimming. I tried so many other sports and I was terrible at all of them. And I said, well, I can swim. I'll just join the swim team and that'll be my high school sport. I wasn't bad at the freestyle, but I don't think anybody would say I was good per se. I was very on like the low end of average, and I was good at breaststroke. And I went to college for business school afterwards, and I went to a D3 school. So I had the ability to swim because I wasn't, you know, good enough for a D1 or D2, and maybe like a walk on in breaststroke in D2, but I said, I'll go to a D3. It's the school I had always dreamed of. And my high school and club was so much better than college. I just got worse and worse every year. So I quit halfway through college. And because it was one of those things, I would go home to club over the summer and I get faster. And then I'd go to college and then I would just be horrible all over again. And it was so much stress. So I just said, I don't want to do it anymore. So I quit swimming in college. And then I picked it up after college and master's because, you gain a little weight between high school and college and you need to drop it. So I swam more to stay in shape because it was something I could do. And after that, probably, I don't know, around 25 or something, I moved to Virginia and kind of the same thing. You're trying to figure out what you want to do athletic wise. And I didn't like going to the gym. I'm not a land activity person. So I did pool swimming and I tried to find a master's team I liked, but I think masters is always interesting because if you're not as an adult, like a really competitive swimmer, you always find yourself between lanes. So you're always too slow for one lane, but you're too fast for the other. And nobody really wants you in your lane. And you always think it's just you.
Right.
It's just you and the whole group. But really, you find everybody ends up feeling that way. So I just didn't have an enjoyable experience. So I swam by myself. And that's when my mom was in Michigan. My aunt was in Florida. And my aunt in Florida was going to do a triathlon. It was a sprint triathlon. And she had a knee injury or some sort of injury where she couldn't do it. And they wouldn't refund her money. So, but they allowed her to switch categories. And one of the options was to a relay. And so I talked to my sister and my mom said, let's go down there for a girls' trip. It's going to be a great thing. Like I can swim. So I'll do swimming. And my sister, she's a better runner than I am. So she did the run and my aunt did the bike. And then my mom was, land support cheerleader. And so that was my first experience at open water. I just thought, well, I can do it in a pool. I can do it in the open,
Yeah.
what you hear. And I got down there and I'd never seen a wetsuit before. I didn't even know really what wetsuits were. And because it was a triathlon, everybody was wearing a wetsuit. Yeah. And they look in shape. I mean,
wetsuits are great like that.
Wetsuits are so intimidating because they make you look athletic. So I got super intimidated. And I was also intimidated by the sheer amount of people because I've never really been in an event. And I mean, I didn't do any research ahead of time. I just thought I'll just go swim. I think it's a quarter mile. Like, no problem. I can do that. And I was convinced because it was in Florida, I was going to get eaten by an alligator. So I had that kind of hesitation too.
Right.
So my strategy was I'll just eat a whole bunch before because I feel like that's a good idea. So I'm not hungry during the swim. And I'll let everybody go and I'll just watch what they do and I'll follow along and I'll finish. And so that's what I did. I started in the back of the pack. I think I was the only one I remember seeing without a wetsuit. And as I go, you realize that triathlon swimmers, this is a generalization, but triathlon swimmers are different than swimmers. And, you start passing some people when you're only 100 yards in, and then all of a sudden you gain confidence, but you also think, am I doing something wrong?
I'm doing something wrong. I've still been there.
These people are supposed to be in shape, they're half my size and they look super fit and they're doing a triathlon. And so I just said, well, I'll just keep going around because I'm not going to win, obviously. So I'll just follow people until I'm done. And then I got out in probably the top half of the pack.
Wow.
And I was super proud of myself. And that was kind of my first experience. And I thought, I think I like this. I think I want to do it again. But at the same time, sometimes even the worst experiences are fun when you're with family. So I wasn't really sure if I liked it. So there was my second experience. There was a guy that I was kind of sort of interested in dating, and he lived down in Virginia Beach. But it was far enough away where I didn't really want to put any effort into it because I wasn't really sure. But they had the Jack King Ocean Swim down there, and it was a mile swim. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go down to the swim, and that'll give me an excuse to go on a date with the guy. And what ended up happening is I did the swim, and that first year was a horrendous swim because the current or tide, whatever it was, switched last minute. So the whole thing was against the tide or against the current, and they didn't change course because they didn't really realize it had switched so soon. So the mile was, I think, like 56 minutes for the mile or something. It was the slowest mile in my life, but I had so much fun, and I just enjoyed it so much. I ended up hanging out with the swimmers. I canceled on the guy and went out with the swimmers to dinner and never pursued that. But kind of the guy was the excuse and the catalyst to do something I found out I really enjoyed. And then that trip kind of became my sister moved out to Virginia a few years after, and that became our annual sister trip to Virginia Beach. I'd save up all my hotel points, and that was our free swim trip. And that really translated to, because it was my first, it was a mile event. And when you're in club, a mile is a punishment event.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And that was the first time I had fun swimming that distance. So that gave me the motivation to really go to the pool, keep me in shape. I got a coach after that, just one of the community pool swim lesson coaches. But I thought, well, he might be nice to chat with and just make sure I'm not getting sloppy.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't, an event coach, but it was nice because it was the first time I was actually coached in a while with somebody who, I'm not the 12-year-old swimmer that he's used to. So it's nice to kind of start building a coaching relationship again.
I feel like it's an interesting thing that I've observed just as a coach when I talk to swimmers, is that not everyone, you made this statement, like, I didn't want to get sloppy, but how did you know that you might? Like, how did you know that, that you needed a coach? I just have to dig into that for a minute.
That's a good question. I don't know. I think it's one of those, once you've been coached, you kind of recognize that. I think it's that just internal thing. I don't know how to describe it. You just have that gut feeling that I knew I knew what I was when I was younger. And because I'm slower now, that maybe I think you kind of have this thought process of it's not because I'm older. I mean, I'm sure it's because my technique is bad or something like that. And I think in high school and college, you're coached so much on technique that if you're not fast or if you're not getting better, it's because your technique is bad. So I think it's maybe just an innate thing.
Yeah, that's interesting, though. Actually, you kind of highlight something there. I'm not sure that everyone is coached as much on technique. At least when I think back on my swimming, it was more like that was maybe an annual check-in, or we did drills at the beginning of practice. But I don't know that I ever got really good technique coaching. I remember taking WSI class and the and the teacher, to teach swim lessons, and I've been swimming for probably 6, 7, 8 years. And the coach, the teacher of the WSI class being like, Shannon, your arms are so long. Like, why don't you use your length when you're swimming? And I learned how to swim better at 17 than I had in all my years of swim team. So anyway, I'm glad that you had the exposure to the fact that the importance of technique. So yeah, that's all. We'll just leave that there. Take us back.
So in my high school, and my club coach was very, very different. So my high school team, it was back in the day, you're taught in general how to swim, but unless you're, at the top tier, I think you're more coached. Let's get in the yards because you're an important member of the team, and you're gonna score points for the team, and you're gonna make it, and that's about it. And then so it was just pounding up the yards in high school. Now my club coach, and when I say club, my coach after I graduated college. So I swam with the high school club team, a different high school club team. And when I say masters, I was the only masters person trying to recruit other people. I think I got 2, but he was my first exposure to reduced yard training and focus on technique. And I think that was just the first time, sometimes you're not swimming 3,000 yards in practice, and you're doing 2, and it takes an hour, but you're really focusing on things. So and he was one of my favorite coaches. So I think, I don't know, maybe that's the reason I thought, I don't know, I should get a coach.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome awareness that I think that more people should have. So I'm glad we're talking about this.
What is swim freedom? It's the freedom to start swimming when you don't think you have the skill, ability, or time. The freedom to swim with ease. The freedom to enjoy your time in the water. The freedom to swim further than you ever thought possible. What's holding you back? Let's talk about it. Shannon at intrepidwater.com.
So back to Virginia, I got my coach, and again, I wasn't the 12-year-old, and I was just kind of looking and seeing what other open water events. And there was this event up in Michigan, the Harbor Springs Coastal Crawl, and it was really cool because they had a 1, 2, and 3 mile event. So I had this plan. I'm going to start with the 1 mile, and then the next year I'll do the 2. And the year I was going to do the 2 mile, there was some, or maybe it's a 3 mile. I don't know. There's a problem with the course. So I had to do a longer event, and I was fine with that. And I got back down, reporting back to my coach and my swim. And he casually said, "So when are you going to swim the English Channel?" And I think at that time, because again, I didn't grow up knowing open water was a thing, and I just started a couple years before, I was so naive. I honestly can't even say I knew what it was. I mean, I think you kind of know what it is because you generally hear about things, but it's kind of like somebody saying, for the first time, when you're going to go to Paris.
Yeah.
But you don't exactly know where Paris is. You don't know where France is. It was the beginning of a geography lesson. So I kind of just thought about it and I said, "Oh, okay, that sounds like a good idea." And that was really it. And it was just that one person asking that one question. And it kind of got the seed planted. I got transferred to Seattle with work. And I, again, naively walked onto the deck of this pool where a whole bunch of triathletes were practicing. And they're just so in shape. They have a very different body type. And so I didn't want to swim with them because I just thought I wasn't good enough because they looked really in shape and fast. So I kind of lingered on the outside of the lanes for a bit. And then the coach eventually, just said, it was before work. So everybody was practicing together. And he just said, "Nice swimming" one day. And I thought, okay, this is I have to be polite. I'm a Michigander. I have good Midwest values. I'll say thank you, do a little chat, and be on my way. And that was kind of the beginning of developing that coaching relationship. And he's still my coach to today. But explained to him, what I was doing, and I'm going to do the English Channel. He happened to be from England, so he really knew.
Wow.
For real about it.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, if you're going to do that, you should swim at Alki Beach, and you need to talk to that guy in that lane.
Oh, wow.
His name's Randy, and he swims at Alki, and he's going to do it too." And I thought, oh,
what's happening? Wow.
Okay. So I think maybe I should put a plan together or something. And, just all these things your first time, you don't know anything about. And at that time, nobody in the Pacific Northwest was really doing marathon swimming.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I didn't come from that world. So I didn't really have any mentors. I didn't know who to reach out to. Where I'm so thankful now in our community, we have, people like myself and others, and the word's getting out, and there's so many people you can reach out to. So Randy and I, we went to Alki Beach the first day, and I remember going down the hill to the beach, and I'd never seen the mountains before. And the sun was out, snow was on the mountains, the water was like so calm and sparkly. And I just thought, wow, this is, I feel like I'm important. And I feel like this is going to be something special. And, this is a big deal to be here. And so I met a couple other swimmers that were, just starting. Well, I wouldn't say just starting to dabble into marathon swimming, but Scott Lautman, who's a legend himself in marathon swimming, and then Andrew Malinak were the other two people at the beaches. And Andrew had done some marathon swims at that point, but he he hadn't done his big ones in the Pacific Northwest. So it was kind of just meeting those people. Randy and I were talking to them, and, we're starting to form our ideas about what we wanted to do in general with marathon swimming, and specifically for me and Randy, the English Channel. And it kind of just went for there. But still at that time, like, social media still wasn't as popular or prevalent. So I didn't have the resources so many people do today, because that was it wasn't ages ago. It was only 2000. Actually, it was about like 10 years ago when I first started talking to people, 9 years ago. And, social media, you feel like you're an old person saying this, but it just wasn't like it was now. And
right. Yeah.
So we were talking to people, figuring out, and I didn't have any female mentors. I didn't know people in the community. So all the swimmers I met were going to events and meeting people at events. And sometimes I feel like, because I didn't have a female mentor, I missed out on a lot of female specific training things that would have helped. Not that Andrew and Scott were bad mentors. Of course they weren't. They were wonderful, but there's female specific issues, and especially, the moods going through taper combined with the menstrual cycle during taper. Am I getting extra cranky, or how do you manage training when you're feeling really bad at that time of the month, or how do just the hormonal changes affect female swimmers versus male swimmers? And I wish I had somebody to ask those questions. And now, again, I'm just so thankful we do.
Yeah.
So, but that was kind of really the beginning of it. I developed a plan.
So just to clarify, you went from 2 miles to, I'm going to swim the English Channel.
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to be clear about that.
Yes. So I had a shoulder injury, though. It's a small labrum tear, which I still do. So I did, I had a plan to do test swims before it. So my first test swim was an 8-mile swim, or maybe 7 miles. I don't remember. In Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And everybody said, "Oh, you're going to go swim Lake Geneva," meaning like the Switzerland.
Yeah.
So I thought people were really excited about this and knew about it. And when I came back from Wisconsin, they were asking me all these questions. And like, I don't think we're talking about this again. I didn't know about Lake Geneva, Switzerland until after we figured it out. But I got through that one and I made it. And I thought, okay, well, if I can get through that one, then I can do Mercer Island. Was my longest training swim before England. And it was that swim that Scott said, well, if you're going to do the English Channel, you should do Catalina as a training swim too. And if you do Catalina, you're only you're only 1 away from the Triple Crown. So you should just do that then. And I said, oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
It sounds like a good plan. So that was kind of how I got into the Triple Crown. And really it was just learning and, mistakes and going from there that led me into other swims. But it was really interesting because once I got through all those swims, you learn everything. And by that time, social media groups were becoming more popular. And you see all these people doing these really big, long swims. And for me, it was kind of one of those, you see people doing, doubles and triples, and then eventually Sarah doing the quad. And people always asked, are you going to go longer? And it's like, no, I don't. It's great that they have those goals, but I don't want to swim really more than 20 miles. I think that's a good distance for me. And for me too, mentally, if I know I can do a certain distance, it's kind of, granted, all conditions are different, but if I know I can do a certain distance, the distance appeal isn't there for me necessarily to do it then. Because I kind of think, okay, if I can do 20 miles here, I can do 20 miles anywhere. And mentally that was interesting because knowing water conditions are different, but there's something about just swimming numbers wise and doing a triple or a double or whatever it is. I just didn't feel like the challenge was there, because I signed up for the North Channel because I thought that would be fun. But I thought, why do I want to do that? I mean, I've already done the Triple Crown. That was a big goal. But, Manhattan was more of a check the box.
Right.
And if I didn't have the goal of the Triple Crown, I probably never would have done it.
Mhm.
Because I just didn't, New York's not my thing in general. Everybody that said that swim's like amazing. I didn't find it that amazing. It wasn't, I don't know, not my type of swim, not my scenery. And then I canceled North Channel because I thought, well, I mean, I know I can do the distance. What truly is the appeal of going to the North Channel? I couldn't figure it out.
Mhm.
So I decided to take a year off and just kind of do other things. And that's when the idea of, I've never swum here in the Pacific Northwest. I've crewed for so many people, but I've never done a swim at home. And that kind of transpired into, what do I love about home? And I love the seaweed. I love the animals. I love my relationship that I've developed specifically here with the ocean, because it's something I trust. It's something, I can go in and I feel like I understand what the water is saying. And I feel like in some weird way, the animals respect me as a person and as a swimmer entering into their body of water. And they reward me for respecting their place and home. And I said, I'm going to swim here. I love it here. And so I did the Amy Highland double because I thought it'd kind of be fun to do something a little bit more challenging. And even though it was time wise, one of the shortest swims, I worked so hard for that because it's right out of COVID. So you're dealing with, is the swim going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Because COVID keeps going back and out with restrictions.
Right.
The first swim I did in my hometown here in Seattle and is with all my friends. And, I had the support of my hometown group here, and I had the animals and, just all these things I love about nature. And that kind of made me realize I'm not challenged by the distance necessarily. My excitement and joy when it comes to swimming is swimming in beautiful locations where I can have the connection to the water. So whether it's a 2K swim, a 10K swim, or, a 20 mile, I'm not going to do a 20 mile if I don't feel a connection to the place, which kind of stinks because there were a lot of swims early on. I thought it's really cool. I want to do those swims, but if I don't see an animal, I'm going to be disappointed at the end of the day, regardless of what it is.
Take me back to just being this girl from Michigan who moves to Seattle. How do you develop the trust of the water? I did Mercer Island 2017 or 18, I can't remember. And I remember going to Alki Beach, and I don't even know if I got in other than my feet. Anyway, beautiful, like awesome spot. I see you guys' posts out there, and I want to go, and there's people swimming there some point in my life, but I want to know how you kind of developed that trust with the water and how you learn to, just how you made that transition.
First of all, I started out in a wetsuit. So that was, that's something, people don't necessarily know because I don't wear a wetsuit anymore. But when you wear the wetsuit, it was a wetsuit late fall. So the water it was cold, but it wasn't super cold. And I think coming from Michigan, the concept of cold water was different for me because I've experienced cold water in Michigan. But I think it started because I was just so amazed with everything because I had never seen anything like that before. We didn't, as a family, we didn't go on snorkeling trips or if we did go, our tropical vacation on the East Coast, we go to Orlando. And the East Coast beaches, when you're going to tourist beaches or day beaches, you're not snorkeling, you're going and playing in the waves as kids. And so I didn't really know, I've never seen what a starfish looked like before outside of an aquarium. And so all these things like seals and orcas and whales, it was kind of these mythical creatures or things that exist in the wild, but kind of like when you see a tiger in the zoo and if you go for a safari for the first time, it's the same animal, but it's a different experience. And it's almost like you don't really believe they exist in the wild until you see it in the wild. So I got in the water, and the water here is usually always clear or predominantly clear. And Like I saw my first moon snail and I thought, Shannon, I discovered a new species in the water. I remember getting out after seeing my first one, go, you won't believe what I saw. There was this thing, it was a snail, but it had so much stuff outside of it and it had antennas, and you wouldn't believe it if you saw it. And they go, a moon snail? And I said, I don't know, but I'm sure it's something new. And it was like that for everything. The first starfish I saw was just, it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen in my life. And the first sea pen I saw was the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. And then the first time I saw a seal, the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. And so I think coming from Michigan, not experiencing the ocean, not experiencing the mountains, not knowing what old growth forests look like, and just having a completely different environment, it was sensory overload in the most positive way. And I wanted to go in and learn about everything. And that's really important because it was kind of the first time in my life I wanted to learn about something, because my career path in auditing, I didn't go to school for auditing. And my career path of where I am today was just kind of happenstance and kind of a weird run of luck with interviews. But it's not anything that I wanted to do per se. I just happened to land here. So when I find you don't want to do something, or it's not, this is never my career path, for me, it's really difficult to self-educate and learn. And I like my job. It's fine. I mean, I'm happy doing it. I find joy in it. But being in the IT audit space, when I start to talk to like developers and programmers that get really jazzed about coding, my mind is just whoosh.
Yeah.
And then they always say, if you want to progress your career, you should learn about, and I just go, do not say whatever you're going to say about, I don't know, IT stuff again.
Yeah.
So I dabble or had to deal with that my whole career. So the fact that I was really excited to learn about something brand new was also something brand new. And that kind of, gets you into asking questions about what is a current, what is a tide, because I didn't know about those things, and what are these animals, and how do animals react in the water? How do they react to humans? If an animal does this, what does that mean? If the seaweed, why does the seaweed point one way last week, and then why is it going the other way if the waves are coming into shore? Because that doesn't make sense why they're, perpendicular to each other. So you kind of just learn all about this stuff. And over time, through learning and observing, because I love the animals, and just really being patient and focusing on small changes, just got me really excited. And I know my dad, growing up in Michigan, my dad was a deer hunter. So we would always go out, and one of our favorite activities together was to go, drive around at night and spot the deer in the neighborhood or in the woods, or go for walks and try and spot animals. So he taught me really young how to notice small changes in nature that indicate an animal's there. And I feel like I'm able to use that in the water to notice small differences. So it's almost like something I did when I was younger translated to a joy I had when I was older. And that really grew the relationship. And after learning about all that stuff, you just, I don't know, it's kind of like, well, a normal people relationship too. You learn about the person, and then one day you realize, I trust this person. And then you grow to liking that person, and then you're growing to loving that person so much that whatever it does, you might not know why that person is doing something or why the ocean's doing something, but you have that gut feeling and you trust what it's telling you, and you don't question it. So, but it's just been such a beautiful experience here. And that really got me into exploring other things like hiking, swimming. It got me into ice swimming, because I wanted to experience different parts of nature in different elements of swimming. And that kind of is what inspires me to just try different things. I don't want to swim a long swim again. Maybe some more 20 milers at some point in time, but there's no doubles of anything in my future. I don't want to go back to the English Channel and do a solo again. It's fine. I've done it once, and
take us there for a minute. So
there weren't any animals. So
no animals. Okay, no animals in the English Channel. So you're not going back. But what was it like trying to get through that swim?
yeah, the English Channel, honestly, that one isn't a very exciting story because that one, since it was always my first goal, I prepared, everything was a preparation for that swim.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I got there, literally it was just, you're going to swim until you're done. And I was fortunate enough that I got blown out of my window, but I had worked it out with work in a more tactful way. I said, I'm going to stay there until I swim. So I'm not going to come back to work until I get the opportunity to swim. But I started planning over a year in advance with them. So it's not like it was, a surprise or anything. I got blown out of my window, but because I planned, I went probably half a week later at a spot that came up. But it honestly was pretty uneventful. It was the Pacific Northwest is great training because it's super cold. It's not going to be colder there than it is here. So the water didn't feel cold. The conditions can get really nasty here. So they weren't any worse here than they were there. And I don't know. It was just like, it was a very uneventful swim in the grand scheme of things. The end was a little interesting because it was in the dark. And in my mind, I always had the picture of I'm going to be finishing on beach during the day and people are going to be, yay, yay, you finished or something. But it was in the dark in the middle of France, which has no lights. And, and I couldn't tell where shore was. And when they say they have a spotlight to help guide you in, I pictured something other than a $10 flashlight from Home Depot. And because he kept saying, okay, you're about 500 yards from shore, go towards that tree. And I'm just thinking, what tree? I don't see a tree out there. I don't see anything. So I was swimming and I was counting my stroke rate and doing the math, being an otter, I was saying, okay, if my stroke rate is X amount per minute, my 500 time is like this time, then this amount of minutes time, this amount of strokes, plus a little fatigue. So I should be there in, however many strokes. So I was counting and shore did not come. And there's a sandbar that I didn't know was a sandbar because I saw land and a little bioluminescence, and I stood up and was all excited and then dropped off the other end of the sandbar. Like, great, more swimming. So that part was a little dramatic just because it wasn't what I was expecting. But I mean, that was really about it.
Anticlimactic.
Yeah, and the crew said it's pretty anticlimactic because it was, we started at very leisurely 10 a.m. or something like that. And so we got up, got breakfast, had a great night's sleep. The swim was fine. I mean, it wasn't anything outside of the ordinary. And there's nobody cheering on the shore. And I think that's the only way I would go back, because I kind of want to go back and experience a relay because I think it would be fun. But there's still no guarantee that you're going to end during the day. But you see all the relays, like Patrice, he posts all the time, Armada's coming to France. And then you see all the pictures of, daytime and cheering. And I kind of want that one time. But I wouldn't do it solo again. I would say out of all of them, like Catalina was definitely the most, I don't know. I feel like all the swims were dramatic in their own way. The Amy Highland double definitely had the most dramatic 5-minute ending of any swim that I've had. Yeah, but all the other ones, like Catalina, was just 12 hours of vomiting. That was very exciting. I think that would be a really beautiful swim, though. I may consider doing that again. But every time I say that, I think there's no guarantee I'm not going to puke and it's not going to be horrible swim again. Because I want to do it just because I feel like I missed out on all the fun stuff, dolphins, and there's no guarantee, and I don't really want to swim it if I can't see an animal. So
that's right. Animal locations That's perfect. I'm sure there's lots of less than 20-mile animal locations, swims with animals out there.
Yeah, but definitely the Amy Highland double, even though that was the shortest, like the end to that one, I feel like that was the most dramatic end to any swim. And that was interesting too, because it's the first time somebody's gone back the other way. So there wasn't any data or information. And it was all, I think it's interesting when you do a first of something, there's nobody to ask advice about. There's nobody to ask, well, how was your swim? How did this happen? So everything was a best guess. The way back, you know, you kind of think, or at least I thought, going back is going to be fairly similar to going this way. And I know conditions outside of a certain area are one way, and then going into a certain area are another way. So you think, okay, it's going to be kind of be the reverse route. And it wasn't anything like what any of us thought it was going to be. And which was the point too.
Yeah.
So that swim, because nobody had gone the other way, I just thought it would be fun to explore. So that swim I went into going, okay, if I fail on the way back and I DNF, I don't really care, because I just don't really care because nobody's done it. But then the current in that area is so strong. We knew ahead of time, you know, nobody can outswim the current, because the current in some parts are 7 knots. Like you just can't swim it. So if going back isn't the way we think it is, I'll fail anyway, because can't outswim the current. And considering it's only, you know, 10 miles, I'm not willing to swim 6 hours in place for, you know, a couple mile finish. And I thought that was great too, because it took the pressure off having to go back the other way when you don't really care about, it was more a swim of discovery versus I'm going to finish this thing. And then I also use that opportunity because, you know, marathon swimming is picking up everywhere, of course, but there's a lot of people who wanted to learn how to observe, how to accrue. And I was super, you know, I'm super confident in these waters. And I said, I'm going to pick 2 crew members. One that I've crewed for many times, but she's never crewed. So she has like a little understanding of it. And then the second person, just a random person, you know, well, not a random person, a friend. But the point is, neither of them have crewed before. So I really wanted to use that as an opportunity to teach them how to crew and, you know, teach them what it's like to crew on a swim that's over, you know, 4 or 5 hours. And the observer, and then Andrew was the pilot. So we had, you know, we had backups if they really, you know, kind of lost their stuff. But it was really fun to have that swim be at home, be a new route, you know, celebration of just discovery, the Puget Sound, and then also use it as a teaching opportunity to give people experience that specifically don't have experience. Because I tell my swimmers, do not choose new crew. You need to have an experienced person there. So to have the confidence to do something to give somebody else the experience of learning, I think was just, I mean, it didn't matter if I made it or not.
Right.
One. So it was just fun to give that to people.
Yeah, totally. Probably last question here. What do you think it is that inspires us as humans and swimmers to like, why is it that we're always trying to find new things, new routes, new places? Do you have any thoughts about what that drive comes from?
I mean, I think it's the general answer would be learning and an increase of awareness and knowledge. But I think, you know, it varies per person. Like I've heard not Sarah Thomas say, but I've heard Sarah say a couple times she's curious what she's capable of with distance. And, you know, I don't have any desire to do that. That's great. She's doing things 4 times. That's great. She wants to go well over 20 miles. Not for me, but the core of it is she's curious about learning about herself and her body and how far she can go. I know with some ice swimmers, you know, that are pushing boundaries, they're curious and they want to learn how far, myself included, how far their body can go when it comes to cold tolerance and what happens at temperatures that low. And for me in marathon swimming, it's really I wouldn't say change. I feel like I found my way into, I want to learn more about the ocean, and I want to learn more about the marine life, and I want to learn more about My next swim that I'm planning probably a couple years from now is I want to do the North Shore of the Pacific Northwest. I don't want to go across the Strait of Juan de Fuca, but I want to parallel it because I love the land and I love the area, and I want to explore and learn about the history of that area and some of the, the native tribal importance of the area. And I think what better way to honor that and learn than find a route that maybe they can support, and they can teach me about big landmarks and why the ocean is important to them. So I think it comes just down to when people find something they're really interested in, just like when my tea people get really excited about coding, they want to learn about it. I think this is just, when you find that thing that really excites you, you're not afraid to learn. And I think that's important too. There's definitely things I'm afraid to learn because I don't think I'm smart enough to understand it, or maybe not smart enough isn't the right word, but I just don't think I have the mental capacity to understand it where I could ever be proficient in telling somebody about it. In part because I don't care, because I don't have that passion either. So I rather put all my effort into something I'm really excited about, so I can be proficient and give back to others, and teach others who are excited too, and help them learn and help them discover what their thing is. So I think that's probably what it is. Just and maybe, I don't know, maybe giving back is the answer, but I think that goes back to learning too.
It does, yeah.
And maybe it's, maybe the learning is, the more I think about it and learn more about here, maybe it goes hand in hand with sharing and storytelling too. I mean, we grow up as kids learning that how you keep culture is sharing stories, but you can't share stories if you can't learn. So I don't know, maybe that's part of it.
I love it. Yeah, no, it's all connected. It's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Melissa.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you were inspired by even just a moment of this story, please share it with a friend. You never know what might push someone out of their comfort zone so that they can find out what they're capable of. And please leave a review with your podcast provider. It truly helps others discover the raw and honest stories of these amazing endurance swimmers. Thanks for listening.